The AI was built to respond, not to resolve.
Right? What if I said I
Right.
can put a completely automated agent that's going to pick up that call? Not only is it going to pick up that call, it can pick up 1,000 calls at once. I always tell people, remember, the reason AI is so scalable and helps a lot when you have actual agents, especially on like phone conversations, an agent can only take one call at a time. An AI agent can take 1,000 at a time. It can take 10,000 at a time. It doesn't really matter to us.
Solution where I've seen 500% ROIs.
Yeah.
You don't get that in workforce management.
But now with this concept of agentic AI, we can actually complete those end-to-end processes. And that could be that cancellation where, hey, the front end says, what do you want to do? I want to cancel my service.
Welcome to the Contact Center Gurus, the podcast for contact center and customer experience leaders. Learn best practices, new technology, tips and tricks, and more. Listen in.
Welcome to the Contact Center Gurus podcast. I'm your host, Darren Prine, and today's episode is called Escape the AI Graveyard, Why Most Bots Fail and How to Build AI that Actually Resolves. Every contact center I talk to has one, an AI graveyard. Chatbots that got shut down after a few months, pilots that looked great in a demo and disappeared on the floor. And the root problem is almost always the same. The AI was built to respond, not to resolve. Today, I'm talking to someone who has been in the room for over 1,000 enterprise AI deployments and knows exactly where that line is between the ones that worked and the ones that didn't. My guest is Mike Schulman, VP of Channel Sales at Yellow.ai. Mike is a seasoned channel sales leader who has spent his career building and scaling partner ecosystems across the CX and AI space, with deep experience in strategic alliances, distribution channel management, and business development. At Yellow.ai, he helps organizations harness conversational AI to elevate both customer and employee experiences. Before Yellow.ai, Mike held leadership roles at Customer, both before and after its acquisition by Meta, where he led global channel and alliance strategy. He also ran his own consultancy, advising companies on channel growth, partner enablement, and revenue acceleration. He is known for his ability to align partners and internal teams to get measurable results. And outside of work, he is a California guy with a wife and 2 daughters. Mike, welcome to the show.
Darren, thank you so much. Really excited to be here.
Glad to have you. This is going to be an exciting episode, so let's dig in.
Yeah, please. Let's do it. I love this topic. I love when you approach me about what you wanted to talk about. It's so relevant. It comes up 10 times in every day in conversations I have.
Relevant is the key word. Everyone will have an experience they can relate to on this topic. So let's get started. My first question is, most contact centers have their own AI graveyard by now. Abandoned chatbots, pilots that never scaled. From your experience working with over 1,100 enterprises, what is the most common reason companies end up there?
Great question. I think there's a couple reasons, and it's really two completely different approaches of where and why they're failing. So where I could start with, and you see, is a concept of AI readiness. Are companies great? A business unit wants to try something AI, or they want to try, conversational AI for automation, but are they prepared as a company? Meaning I'm the contact center owner. I want to try this. But what people are not realizing is, kind of connecting the dots internally at an organization. And where we're seeing a lot of failure is, number one, has your IT organization signed off and bought on that this is going to meet all their requirements, all their security requirements, things of that nature. And then the other side, which is actually the bigger obstacle, legal. Has your legal, do you need, or are they looking to implement, what is your AI policy going to mean? What is that risk to the organization? What is that risk to their brand? There's a lot of concerns that we're finding legal organizations have, and they're trying to figure out, they can't even answer the question yet. So they're spending months and months trying to figure that out. And until those two components are in place, most customers, even on a POC, are not able to deploy. Like they're being shut down as they're trying to move it forward. So that's one area that I think is really important. The other area is really focused on the concept of early adopters and going back, let's say 2 years, 3 years, where everyone, the term AI got out there, everyone became super excited and everyone's like, I have to have some of that. They thought it was like getting a scoop of ice cream. They were putting sprinkles on it, right? Really easy there. And the problem they had as an early adopter is they had no idea what they wanted to do with it. Like they want to go buy AI. Oh, let's try to figure out where it is. Or I need to get AI, and they're trying to pigeonhole it somewhere. Where I'm finding and where really the conversations have shifted is, it's great that AI can solve problems, but let's identify what is that problem or a few problems they have, those couple use cases where there actually are problematic to the organization. And then let's use AI to fix that. That is like take the inverse approach instead of just trying to say, let's buy something and see if we can figure out where to put it. Right. And that's been another giant failure where people are trying to figure out where it goes, or we bought something, but most of the people don't actually know what they bought. Right. So it's like, if I don't even know what it is, how do I know where to use it? Right. So again, as being a vendor on the vendor side is if we can identify, hey, these are the use cases. These are the good example is, hey, like if you're a contact center, what are some of your high volume inquiries that are coming on board? Maybe do a lot of returns, maybe do a lot of subscription cancellation. Just pick an example, pick that one use case, and then we can come back and show them, hey, let me show you how I can automate that for you. So that's no longer hitting your contact center. And the other last piece I'll bring up here is there's a lot of confusing terminology out there right now. Everyone's using the buzzwords. It's a generative AI. Is it agentic AI? And I always tell people I like to dumb it down. Generative AI, the ability to create new content, kind of simple, straightforward. And then agentic AI, agentic to me at least, and you could see a lot of different definitions, is the ability to complete end-to-end processes. And that is where I think people in the contact center are going to get that big value. Historically, a bot can answer a question or the term deflect, but is it actually getting the customer's problem fully taken care of? And the answer was no, right? It was a way to maybe lessen or give them the ability to self-serve bits of information. But now with this concept of agentic AI, we can actually complete those end-to-end processes. And that could be that cancellation where, hey, the front end says, what do you want to do? I want to cancel my service. But what happens on the back end? There's different integrations to all the other tools and systems that are actually going to action it, cancel it, complete it, give that customer that confirmation. That problem is done, eradicated, and they've maybe spent, 30 seconds with your bot. And that is where the customers are starting to see value. And we're seeing a ton of customers come our way that have those high volume requests that don't need human interaction. But by the way, if they want it, always give your customers an escape route, I call it. Meaning hey, at any point, if you want to talk to a live person or hit 0, go for it. But I think they're going to be pleasantly surprised that you no longer need that person. The capabilities have grown and continue to grow day after day to eradicate those problems. And I think, like I said, that's where I always base the conversations and shifting. But at the same time, I will finish my comment. Points that I mentioned earlier are still pretty, happening on a daily basis as well. Because different customers are at different points on this learning journey. And until you get them to the right point, it's really not worth talking about what your solution does because, I could say my solution can take over all your problems. And by the way, it's free, which obviously I kind of say that jokingly here, but great. Until you're at that point of AI readiness, you're not going to implement a free solution either. Right. So that's where we're kind of seeing and making changes.
Absolutely. From our perspective at Cloud Tech Gurus, where we consult around CX transformation, one of the biggest things we push is AI readiness, because more often than not, a company has disparate and oftentimes unstructured data. And first, we need to address that. because AI is only as good as the data it has to work with. Companies should spend the money on AI readiness assessment, make sure that they're fully prepared so that they can see the potential of what a great AI like Yellow can bring them.
No, Darren, couldn't agree more. I'll finish up there. That is like, I think, like the missing piece of the puzzle is that, helping a customer, where are you in terms of that AI? Like there, we have this chart. I always use it's we have like an AI readiness chart. There's different levels across where you are in terms of AI readiness. But if you're not like, I'd say 60 to 70% of all customers are not even at level 1 yet. Meaning they don't even know, like when you say, are you AI ready? They don't even know, like you need to help them define that. So that is one of the biggest pushes. And then that makes a conversation from Yellow when we're talking about the Yellow platform, it makes it that much more impactful because they do have that baseline of understanding and preparation internally across the data structure, IT, legal, all those moving pieces here. So I always lean on you, and I've mentioned, when we saw each other in person last week, like I think that's a great value to add and bring out there because what's that term? Like you only know what you know, or you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Whichever direction you want to go, glass is half full, glass half empty. But that readiness is the most important element to really move forward AI conversation.
Yeah. And you've got clients I know I'm aware of where you're resolving up to 96% of interactions. But I would imagine the difference between a client that's seeing 96% and one that's seeing 15% is probably oftentimes that data, and they weren't prepared.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. It absolutely is, because the one thing I always tell people is, there's a difference between, where your data, like where it's located, not as important as what's really important piece is the quality of the data. And because that is how you're going to drive specific outcomes specific to your business, is because you have, whether it can be your knowledge, like a knowledge base, that's a great example here, all your processes and procedures, those are unique to you. And especially in the CX or customer service, kind of approach here, you want to make sure that you're returning only accurate answers back to your customer. And the way you do that is by limiting what data you're exposing to the AI. And that is your company's specific information here. So again, the good data, the right type of articles, the right type of process and procedures, that's the part where customers need to focus on. In terms of it being in 20 different repositories, I don't really care. We can point the back end to all of them and ingest, index, use all of them. That part is fine.
Cool.
So the cleanup is around quality, not location or necessarily structure.
So when a CX leader comes to you saying they want AI, what are they actually trying to accomplish? And what outcomes are really driving that investment?
Great question. And for me, it varies around, do they have an opinion or an idea of where they want to focus, or do they want to help? Do they want our help to kind of identify that? So that's kind of where the conversation starts. And usually we pick. I think the early adopters had this concept of, hey, somebody signed the check, I'm going all in. Right? And they don't know what they're going all in on. So where we kind of focus now is, let's pick one or two use cases. AI is a great, that term, like land and expand. It's like the best way to get a customer on board and their organization to adopt and follow everything is by picking one or two use cases where they can show success and then build from there. So I always tell people, like, hey, like, a great question for a contact center, leader is, hey, do you have 24/7, support in your contact center? Majority, I'd say 90% of we talk to say no. Right. That's a great spot to start. Let's start with after hours. Right now, you're doing absolutely nothing. So you can only improve that process. That's a great place to start. Or, hey, like, you've run some metrics, you see like your either call logs, or you've analyzed them, or your tickets, or whatever way you're looking at it here is, what are the really high volume repetitive inquiries you're doing? And depending on what those are, those are the things that we would say, let's start there, because it is really easy to focus on, that area you're doing nothing, or those high volume, inquiries that are very repetitive over and over. So with that, what are customers looking for in that space? Ideally, things have changed. The standard metrics are always in place. Hey, we want greater increased CSAT, happier customers. What's all that data say? Happier customers equal repeat customers. And I always throw that out there because it's a lot easier or more cost effective to maintain and grow with the customer than it is in net new customer acquisition. A lot of companies always talk about, their cost for, to acquire net new customers is skyrocketing, and you want to keep them there. Which is a great way to focus. But what are the metrics that are important to you? I think an organization versus the consumer, they're pretty different. That organization, hey, we want higher retention rates. We want, higher CSAT. We want, higher customer satisfaction. We want to hit all those things. We want to free up our agents' time to focus on more complex issues. I want to reduce my investment in my actual agents by X%, right? I want to, I need to do more with less. I need to cut my operating costs, like removing some of those people. All those different things come into play. When you're on the consumer side, though, for a long time, people were so worried, hey, with a voice agent, is it sound human-like enough? Is it, going to be easy to work with? Am I going to understand it? Technology across the board has come a long way over the last couple of years here, where, they do sound very human-like on those voice agents. They all are kind of similar, knowing there's a baseline of the voice provider that everybody uses. So where it comes down, though, is, how effectively and efficiently you can help your customer eradicate their problem. And they just I want my problem solved quickly and easily. And that is what I believe customers are looking for today. And let me just give a quick example I think brings it to light here.
Yeah,
I'm
great.
sure all of us have been, at the airport, waiting, and all of a sudden you get that alert, my flight's been canceled, and you're physically at the airport. And what happens when that when you go there? Oh, let me go into the app and check. And what do they always for some reason they always say, oh, you actually have to call up. And what happens when you have to call up there? Call an airline. Hey, Darren, thanks for calling. Your whole time is 35 minutes. Why do I
You're
need to
lucky if
talk to
it's
somebody?
35 minutes. I've had to wait 4 hours before.
Exactly. Why do I need to talk to a live person to just find a new flight, right? What if I said I can put a completely automated agent that's going to pick up that call? Not only is it going to pick up that call, it can pick up 1,000 calls at once. Remember, I always tell people, remember, the reason AI is so scalable and helps a lot when you have actual agents, especially on phone conversations, an agent can only take one call at a time. An AI agent could take 1,000 at a time. It could take 10,000 at a time. It doesn't really matter to us. And again, by giving it access to those different tools and systems, I can see what your booking is. I could see our whole flight schedule of the day. I could find a time that's available, has a seat there to put you on. And by the way, Mr. Customer, I can now help you completely move your flight, rebook, get on your flight, send you your confirmation, and that call might take 30 seconds, right?
Right.
Again,
And relatively, it's a pretty simple workflow. I mean, it has access to the schedule. It has access to what seats are available. And really, it's just a matter of walking through the client through choosing the flight they want, the seat they want at the time they want, and booking it. And then, of course, giving them, their notification afterwards and so on. It's like you just said, it should be relatively easy and quick. And yet, I don't know of any airline that I haven't experienced it. And I always have flights with American and others where, something gets bumped, something happens. And it's always a time consuming, super frustrating experience where it could be an easy one, as you've just described.
Yeah, and Darren, let me ask you a quick question. Again, you've experienced it so much there. Every time you have to talk to that live agent, are they doing anything so special that you really needed to talk to them?
Nope.
Exactly, right? And now it comes down, the problem being is it's costly to say we're going to have 10,000 agents available at any minute. Hence, we have a limited number of agents, means increased hold times, right? Where, again, an AI agent, an AI voice agent, let me answer all 1,000 calls at one time and give them the exact same outcome in 30 seconds, by the way.
Yeah. And there was an issue where an airline a couple of years back, December around Christmas, I mean, they had to cancel like 10,000 flights or something ridiculous. There was so many customers that they needed to contact, and it created a problem. They actually almost got in trouble with the government, and they had to hire a BPO to actually reach out to every single person, an outbound call to every single person that had their flight canceled to try to, correct things or offer them something in compensation. But how great would it have been if at the time it was happening?
Yeah,
It could have actually, they could have even done outbound to all of those clients.
Of course, we love that term proactive support. Yes, like
Proactive,
these
yeah.
AI agents, they could do inbound and outbound, right? It doesn't matter to them. It's all about, how you're creating that workflow. What do you want them to do? And again, we can eradicate that exact same use case, from that proactive support approach as well.
Yep. Love it. So my next question is one we basically already covered, but we'll just lightly cover it real quick
Yeah.
for anyone that missed it. Agentic AI, it's being thrown around everywhere at the call center shows now. Above the company's name, it'll say Agentic AI now. And it is confusing for people to really understand what it means. You've described it as a solution that could actually handle a complete workflow or process from beginning to end, from before the interaction, through handling and resolving the interaction, and then everything that needs to happen post interaction. Order gets placed, receipt gets sent, etc. Anything else to add to help people really know what the difference is between real agentic AI and other types of AI?
Yeah. Well, I always like to tell people, because as you said, I'll mention that term gets thrown out improperly there. I saw somebody do a pitch once where they kept using the term, every other word was agentic this, agentic that. And all they were talking about was like a simple bot or a voice agent capturing data and then handing it off to a live agent. The problem I always tell people there is, if you're going to do that every time, one, you're not reducing costs, right? You still need the same number of agents, and all it's doing is capturing data to pass to the agent. That's not really super
You've
helpful.
created an IVR.
Exactly.
It.
So it comes down to the ability to have that end-to-end process, and how you achieve that. And I always like to tell people is, and this might be, this is more, I'll speak very quickly specific about Yellow here, like, or at least how we operate is by the ability to integrate into all the tools and platforms that your agents use. And that can be done via our a direct integration we have, which, like, I believe we have like 140 out of the box, or we have this, API, API layer, orchestrator layer that sits on top, where anything that has APIs can simply plug into it, and then it can take those different actions as it gets to that step of that workflow, right? So, maybe it's, hey, let me look up your reservation. Then let me see, oh, okay, so we've canceled you. Let me see, okay, based on your city you're going to, what are the flights that are available to have seats on? Let me look there. Okay, let me book you into that flight. And then the last piece, let me trigger in confirmation, whether that be email or SMS or WhatsApp or whatever mechanism you wanted to send there. So again, being able to access all those different tools and systems to find the data, use the data, action it, and then confirm it, right? Following, like I said,
Let
from
me
the
ask
start.
you this. This came to mind. So I think of orchestration as the ability to automate across all departments in various systems that a company uses. Is all agentic AI also providing orchestration, or are there companies that provide orchestration but that are not agentic AI?
Great question. I'm going to give my opinion. I don't know if this is factual.
Yeah,
I just don't. There's
tricky
so many
one.
companies out there, but I
Yeah.
would say absolutely there are companies that are just orchestration layers that are, a good example here is if you do a lot in the bank, like in the banking, it happens a lot in credit unions. They have some of their web-based, their core banking platform, their web-based
Jack
banking
Henry.
platform and stuff like that, where you need kind of like an orchestration middle layer because they are not native, like cloud built. They don't have native APIs and stuff there. So you do use, like, there are some like third party orchestration platforms that are basically that middleware that are allowing you to connect and bring the power of all these different tools and systems together. But like, that's all they're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a Yellow platform, we're actually the one that are taking and completing those processes, but we're using a third party layer if we had to in that situation there. So I guess the answer is yes, there are people that do play in both realms that are not necessarily one and the same.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you guys are in the or handling orchestration, have an orchestration layer in addition,
Yeah,
which is cool.
absolutely are. And that is the power of our platform and the ability to orchestrate and execute across these different workflows by leveraging the power of, like, it not only orchestrates how it's accessing third party systems, but actually orchestrates some of the workflow and stuff that's happening in our own platform.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you think of it almost on a personal level, how I use Claude, and everybody has their favorite, some Grok and whatever. But in using AI personally, or even in business personally, ultimately the type of AI we want is agentic, where we can actually kind of duplicate the work we would manually have to do ourselves and have AI actually be able to handle it like a human would through to completion
Yeah, no, I couldn't
across
agree more.
different systems.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, Darren. And it's one of those things where if you're not just, again, this is how I look at it. If you're not completing those end to end processes, like you're not looking to complete them, from start to finish here, and like, oh, we're having it like we're using AI just to capture different data and all this stuff. Maybe I'm wrong here, but isn't that just become an additional cost to the contact center? Because, hey, it's great. It's still, you're not completing end to end. So you're still needing those agents or whatever components you're using there. And you're bringing in this tool that, okay, it's helping you capture data. That's just an additional cost. Like, you're not like, it's not a trade off. It's like, oh, I went from, one body to now one body plus some AI, and that's going to get me there. Or I can have that true agentic solution that's like, I'm going to replace that body, right? And I'm going to replace some of the other stuff here. So that's, again, different people are looking for different things here. But, I would say, like, when you want a true agentic, agentic platform that can help you, like I said, it will replace costs. It will, it'll be a shift from bucket A to bucket B maybe, but again, it's not, by no means is it increasing any cost. It's, if anything, it's helping reduce them also because you can do way more with less.
I mean, AI is the only solution where I've seen 500% ROIs.
Yeah.
You don't get that in workforce management.
No, absolutely. And it's, I always say it's our jobs, like, to help customers understand where they're going to get, like, where can they get a quick ROI and show value. But then as they can scale and build out, there are other areas then you can start building in and showing all this different return, all these different cost savings, consolidation of tools and systems, retirement of old systems and tools that maybe they won't need anymore, so there's a lot of conversation that has to go. But again, if a customer is not seeing value early on and that, ROI on that small piece, a small customer is never going to become a large customer. They have to get that value up front. So that's why I always tell people, try to keep it simple.
Yeah, absolutely. So one fear I hear from CX leaders is that AI deployments become long IT projects the team can never really own. What does time to value actually look like with Yellow, for example? And once you are live, how easy is it for the CX team to manage the platform and expand to new channels on their own?
Great question. I always tell people, like, it varies, but we see, like, from just a deployment standpoint, we've seen customers go live in 3 weeks, but we say 3 to 12 weeks. And it depends on, there's a lot of pieces that come into play, and that is how complex is that deployment? That's number one. And with that complexity is, hey, what work does the customer have to do on their side? As an example, maybe they have some old systems or proprietary systems they need to build APIs to. build a, they need expose APIs that we could connect to. That might be one example. The other thing, and what I see quite a lot, is do you have a team in place at the customer side that is dedicated to this project and actually has the time for it? Like, I've been in a couple deployments where the customer is like kept turning over their team. People keep leaving, and then all of a sudden people that have come on board, they don't know, forget that they don't even know what the scope of this project is. They don't know anything about AI or like some of the responsibilities people thought were going to fall to them. So that's number one. Like, do you have everybody committed and dedicated to keep the project schedule on track? I think that's a big piece. That's not specific to anything AI. That's specific to just, basic project management in my kind of opinion there. That's a big one in itself. But assuming everything is on track, you're able to get different channels connect, get the data connected, move that, you should be able to go from like that early phase to that testing phase within a couple weeks in reality there, depending on how complex things are. And, and then as we shift here, and like I said, more on the Yellow side, like what I think the beauty of our platform is, one, we have this concept of build once, deploy many. And what we mean by that is, so we work natively out of the box across 35 unique channels. And those can be, both external customer facing channels like your voice, your SMS, your chat, or internal channels, where maybe you're using like Slack or Microsoft Teams to reach out to the IT help desk or things of that nature. So with that one build once, deploy many approach, once a workflow is built, you can literally just click a button to a new channel and just deploy that same workflow on a different channel. And so It makes it really easy and quickly. The other thing I always tell customers is, and what we're seeing is when the customer is having a lot of success out there, but hey, we do 90% of our business over voice. Hey, it might be worth trying to launch a new channel. And the reason I always bring that up is, majority of digital channels are significantly cheaper to operate than voice, because with voice,
Right.
You're paying for a seat license, you're paying for minutes, you're paying for whatever other hidden expenses are out there. So, a chat channel is super easy to launch, and as I said, operates almost at no cost, right? Or a very low cost. So I think that's important. The other thing which allows customers, and I know you asked, to be really successful with Yellow, where we tout ourselves is, I would say Yellow is not a developer platform. What I mean by that is you do not need to know how to write code or be technical to really manage the platform. We have a lot of prompt builders and things behind the scenes that allow you in very plain text just to say, what are you trying to accomplish? And it can basically automatically build the workflows to an extent for you there. So what happens quite often is we'll have a team shadow us during the initial deployment. We'll set up the scoped workflows with the goal of they're going to take it over from there. And that's something I think is also a huge benefit here. And there's a big worry. There are customers that want this whole thing fully managed. That's fine. We do that. We can do that. There's customers that are really nervous about managing and maintaining it. And that's actually a hindrance to them moving forward. We kind of, depending on how you're looking at it, we could kind of approach it from both directions. I think that's powerful to a customer saying like, hey, if we can do it for you, but if you want to do it yourself, that's great. It's actually not that hard to do also, and we can teach you.
Am I dumbing it down too much if I were to basically recap back what you said, in that customers almost can have a conversation with Yellow in building out what they want? So yeah, they don't need to write code. They don't have to be a data scientist. To some extent, it's almost like they're able to have a conversation with it to build what they need. And then at which point, after it's live, they essentially have the keys to the kingdom to create, new channels, to create new campaigns, to do whatever they need to do. Most importantly, as anyone that's had CCaaS with multiple vendors, you're used to a scenario where you're having to wait on the vendor to make a change for you. Like in the old days, we need to change this in our IVR, and you might have to wait for weeks for interactive intelligence, for example, for their team to go in and make the change for you. You couldn't go in and do it yourself because it was way too complicated. But in your environment, once they've had some training and understand how to interact with it, it's relatively straightforward. And they're in control and they can do what they need to without having to wait on your professional services or support team to do things for them.
I think that's a great summary, and I think that is 99% accurate.
All right.
Because it is that, because there are always exceptions to it,
Right.
but for the most part, like I said, we are intentionally designed that you can, if you want to, manage and maintain it yourself. Again, not being that developer, not knowing how to write code. Is there areas where you can write code? Sure. But
Yeah.
that is, like, how many people work within the, maybe the contact centers are self-contained, business unit. Maybe they don't have those developers are part of IT. They don't have them available to them, right? Like,
Right.
I want to empower them. And I think we do a good job of that.
Awesome. So my last question is the most fun one. Give us 2 or 3 real before and after stories. Pick your best examples of clients that escaped the graveyard. What did their situations look like before? What changed? What did the outcomes show?
Yeah, I got a couple here, a couple I'll even mention by name. I think one of the most powerful ones is, I think a lot of people know the name Waste Management or Waste Connections, I believe.
Heck
Big
yeah.
sanitation garbage company. They operate in, I believe, 35 states. And they came to us when the COVID pandemic hit. They had a problem. And their problem was pretty normal, is with everybody being stuck and trapped at home, they were being home more, they were creating way more garbage. And with that, there were a lot more issues. There was pickup issues, like I missed my pickup, more billing issues, more higher things. So all of a sudden, their contact center was receiving like massive spikes in inbound calls. And I believe they were getting somewhere around like 25,000 calls a month or something like that, where it was across those different issues here. So what they wanted to do is they wanted to put a bot in front of it that can basically alleviate having to have all these extra people taking these calls, whereas basic stuff, like I said, I missed a pickup, I didn't get my bill, or have a billing question, things of that nature. So we were able to stand up a bot for them that can either do scheduling or re-pick up or getting them a bill and doing all that kind of stuff. I believe we went live in under a month with them, which was great. And because of the cost reduction of, automating all those calls coming in, I don't recall off the top of my head what the time frame was, but they saw like a cost savings of somewhere like in between like $3.5 to $4 million, which is really a real return. And I always like to talk about like real numbers, because that's where like an aha goes off for people here. Because again, think about what I said earlier here is, it was a high volume, highly repetitive, and really not that complicated test. And by the way, could I take care of more complex tests? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But again, all that high volume basic stuff that got driven because, hey, everyone was stuck at home, we can alleviate that for you, right? And reduce those calls. So those agents are taking, the calls that really do need their attention, things that are being, expedited up to them, things that are much more complex. So we were able to take care of that. That's always a good one we like to talk about.
Yeah. Great one.
Another interesting one, different type of use case I love talking about, is we have this company called Feral Gas. And I don't know if that's a name. It's actually a big company where a lot of people are like, I have no idea who that is.
Yeah.
Feral Gas is, and I don't know if you know the name, Darren, but Feral Gas is the company that sits behind when you go to Home Depot or any gas station, the Rhino branded propane tanks. That's Feral Gas. That's the name of the company behind the scenes. So think about all the propane tanks that you need for your barbecue, you need for space heaters, fire pits, different things there. What was happening is, again, they were seeing massive spikes in terms of, the volume. I think, again, back to like, I believe during the COVID timeframe, people were stuck at home. All of a sudden they're barbecuing more. They're using all their stuff at home more. And like what was happening was, really all their the way they were using it is all their vendors, and that can be the big box stores, that could be the gas stations that have it all. Like they were having issues of, basically placing orders or placing new orders for replenishment here. So what we did, we set up a bot that basically was able to take their orders automatically for all the, because they were spiking up so high over time. Because again, it's just like, hey, I'm calling from, I live in Woodland Hills, California, at Los Angeles. So like, hey, I'm calling from, the Shell station at XYZ address. My case of tanks is open. Can I order, 25 tanks? I need them as soon as possible. Like, just making this stuff up as an example here. And again, that entire end-to-end process of reaching out or placing that order. And then once we take that order, what happens behind the scenes? Processing that order, getting it entered into our system, going through that processing, getting set for delivery, and pushing out to scheduling of that delivery. That entire process got automated. And I believe with them, we were able to, they looked at it based on the orders processed. And for them, so the orders processed through this, in whatever that, I don't know what the time frame was, but they recognized like $14.5 million of net new business. Right. Again, another tangible result, because these are actions that, again, like you don't need people to do this stuff anymore. What you need and what your customers want is they just want it to be easy and fast. Right. Like how much work is like, yes, I know I'm placing an order. It's like, oh, you're waiting on hold because to place an order. Right. Like doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of ways companies can use it. And, and with that, whether it be inbound or even like I mentioned earlier, or, kind of that outbound motion, being proactive around that. Like, hey, like I'm just thinking about that, placing propane tank orders. What if, like, instead of you waiting for them to call, what if, like, hey, what if you just had a tool that automatically just called out to them every 2 weeks? Hey, I'm calling from Federal Gas. Do you need a refill of tanks? Like, do you need, what's your inventory look like? Right. And like automatically go in there and you completely automate that process to check in where are they and do they need more? Right. What? There's no reason to talk to anybody. Right. And that's again where my opinion is there's still a misunderstanding. And that misunderstanding is, people so worried about like, how's the customer going to react? Are they going to like it? Does it sound human-like enough? I don't think they care. And I'm basing that statement based on the fact that I have, and our organization has hundreds of conversations, every month with different customers and different likes. And, the end customer priorities are different now. It's about the ability to make their lives simple and easy and just get what they need. And that's the big shift that I've seen in
That's
this
what people
AI.
want. It's simple, it's easy. You have tangible results for the end client. They're getting, what do we want? We want our problem solved as fast as possible with the least amount of friction. And with the human agent, there's a lot of factors, accents you can't understand, quality issues, any number of things that you're not going to have with AI. And we've seen situations in healthcare, for example, where elderly folks, according to one of my clients, preferred talking to the AI. They would wait till after hours so that they could get the AI, because when they're talking about particulars, health related, they felt more comfortable sharing with an AI than having a human know about their health challenge.
Yeah, no, and that's a fair statement. And we've seen the conversations all over the place, and just more of like wearing the salesman hat type thing. I always like to bring up is if you're having a conversation and it's still talking about, well, like I'm nervous about how my customers are gonna respond to it, and they're like that's to sell to that customer, that's gonna be a long process. The reason being is like, it's like there are so many tools and samples and ways you can go and see what the different AI can do right now until they educate themselves about like where we are at this point in time, what is reality of what's available. Until they know what's there and they're comfortable with it, they're never going to be ready to dive in and use AI and make maybe a purchase of AI. So that's all. Like, it's funny. We have these conversations come on board and like using that criteria. It's like, oh, is this going to be like a 6-month education process, or is this going to be somebody looking to say, I want to be alive yesterday, right? And there's people everywhere in between. So it's like the hottest topic out there. I always tell people it's like, in AI conversation, it's probably the easiest conversation it's ever been working at a vendor to secure a conversation with a customer or a prospect, right? Because everyone wants to talk about this, but you have to be able to talk about the gamut because people are at different points in time. And again, hopefully you're willing to nurture them along, but you need to figure that out and figure out where they are because again, like, I think let's use the term our playbook has sort of defined at this point, depending on where they are in their journey will determine like, are they ready to actually adopt something?
Absolutely. No, it's interesting. I think Generation Z that prefers digital over voice, I believe that generation will prove out, and we'll see if I'm right or not, to actually prefer AI over humans because it's so direct. They can understand it. It's direct. It solves their problem fast versus a human who's going to, there's all those fake questions about your day and this and that the AI might just skip. It might just resolve the issue quickly without getting too personal, asking too many questions, having an accent that's hard to understand. I think the Gen Z, which is the most important generation for us to be catering to right now, is going to end up being, very pro AI and would choose AI over human. I think that's going to end up being the case. And another thing that I noticed is, as a former agent myself, working for the phone company, it was those repetitive calls that I got that had me banging my head on my desk. And the reason I quit when I did was I couldn't handle it. It just drove me insane. They were inane. And what I wanted was more challenging ones. For instance, I like to sell. What I wanted is someone on the line where I could talk to. Back then, we were amongst the first to have cell phones that we were offering clients. And so I wanted to sell cell phones or the more expensive, feature rich home phones, things like that, where I actually could get bonuses and get my name on the board and the bells ringing and win gift baskets and prizes. And that's what I wanted. I didn't want can you tell me about my bill or I need to move from here to there? Those are the ones that eventually drove me away from being an agent. So I could see that while AI might reduce seat count for the agents that you keep, it's probably going to reduce attrition because now they're only getting the interactions that are challenging, that they find interesting, and they're not getting those repetitive, annoying, inane interactions.
Yeah, and I think my last comment with that also is, when people look at, if they break it into different tiers of like a tier one inquiry versus tier two, generally, the goal is AI can address all those tier one requests, right? Highly repetitive things like that. But then when you need something more complex, that usually escalates up to tier two. And sometimes that's the difference between if you work with like a BPO and you have a large pool of offshore agents versus every company generally has some, like company employees that are, onshore here. Usually they are the escalation path. They're tier two and tier three. So again, anything tier one should be highly automated for the most part. But when you need to escalate something to some more complex, they are going to those, more qualified, more in tune agents there. And you're right, they do stick around longer because they are working on more interesting, more complicated things. And it's funny you talk about working at the phone company here. Like, I always use the example is like, think about every time like, oh, the government passed some law or something and there's like a new tax. And all of a sudden there's like, oh, my bill increased. There's some new tax. What is the thing? All of a sudden you're receiving 1,000 phone calls a day because of that. Like, right? It's like, are you kidding me? How many times am I going to talk about the same thing over? And again, let's go back to what I've been talking about this whole time is like, and does somebody actually really need to talk to somebody about it or not?
Right. And it's easy to just plug in and add, let's just say it's like an additional agent for something specific. A new tax comes, you're going to be getting these. You essentially spin up an agent to handle all of those.
Yeah, exactly.
Again,
Whether it be an agent or just behind the scenes. Maybe you add a knowledge base. Maybe you add an article that talks about it. So it could just say, hey, this is a new tax passed, on April 20th, 2026, addressing this. It's required by federal law that it be charged. Like, just arm it with the information it needs to respond to that inquiry.
I'm going to end on this note, Mike. So from roughly, if I get my dates right, from roughly January 2023 to now, in January 2023, we were helping clients try to go from 5% interactions being able to be handled and resolved by AI to 10%. And then that might even been 2022. But at some point, 2023, we were trying to help companies then move from 10% resolution rates to 20%. And of course, you had OpenAI come out, and then things started to change more quickly and radically. And you got to a point where today it's common for clients to be able to have AI resolve 80% of their interactions. Let's say 60 to 80%. And I might even be conservative. 60 to 80% of tier one and some tier two can be handled by AI. But if we look at 5% to up to 80% in just 3 years, common sense tells you that in another 2 years, AI is going to average handling tier one, tier two in the 80 to 100% range. That's where that's where it's going. We're already far enough along in the resolution rates that a provider like Yellow can provide that it's just a no-brainer for a contact center to get your data in order, do your AI readiness, but then seek out someone like Yellow that you can implement and start seeing these for yourselves. It's what are you waiting for? Really, we're already seeing just unbelievable results. It's working well, and as you said, tangible results. This is something that's got a huge ROI. Everybody should be using it. Every contact center could benefit from it, could save money from it, could improve operations in multiple ways. It's just something that no one should be sitting on. They should be actively engaged right now in making sure that they've got the right AI in place and that they're using it correctly. Am I right?
I think you're 100% right. And I think obviously when people hear those different percentages and you hear, oh, up to 80% or even more, I always tell people to remember is like, that's not the term like a static number. A lot of that depends on like, what's the nature of your business? What kind of increase are you getting? Like I said, if you have these highly repeatable, increases that are happening across, a broad number of topics, you're the right fit for AI today. It's figuring out what are your different use cases where you're going to be getting, the highest return or the highest rate of automation. And that's something any, either a consultant or the right, vendor partner should help you work through to figure out like, what is your starting point? What are the things that you can automate there and then build on? Because the AI will keep getting better over time and is going to be able to do more and more and more. But again, it's figuring out, like I said, am I trying to solve something that really fits like a lot of the AI well today? And that's the other piece of like where we have a lot of conversations to make sure we're starting with the right stuff here. It's like, hey, like if you're trying to set up something super complex and they're like, oh, we're not getting great results. It's like, is it real? Is it manageable what you're trying to do?
Yeah.
Or like, are you like, you're like already your head's in the future, and that's okay. It's just like I said, I think part of it and helping our clients and prospects have success is by keeping them grounded to like, what are the areas we can help them really be successful today? And then we're going to work on together that stuff for the future as AI keeps improving. And AI changes so quickly. I tell people, something you always think about when you're picking who's your right AI vendor is what's current and relevant today might be completely outdated next week. And again, that's why having like a vendor that like all they do is live and breathe AI is really important, versus it just being an add-on module that they happen to offer.
But even if it's just high volume and repetitive interactions, and let's say AI is only automating 30%, you'd want to do it. It makes sense
Yeah.
financially. It works. Now we're seeing much better results on tier one interactions than 30. We're seeing regularly 60 to 80%, not uncommon for there to be clients in the 90% range. Of course, those are companies that are using it for the simple interactions, the high volume repetitive interactions. Although AI keeps getting better and better week by week, and it's handling more of those tier two interactions right now than ever before. And the complexity of the types of interactions I've seen AI handle is pretty mind blowing.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. And again, it comes down to our job also is like I tell everybody through here, it's like where I can help a customer be successful is also helping them look good. Is part of that is let's work together to build realistic, like, like an ROI model. Do you actually understand all your costs and all these moving pieces here to then really have a realistic view of what AI can do for you? That's the other piece here. It's like, oh, we're gonna remediate 90% of your stuff here, but like they don't even know what are the things they should be looking at. Like there's so many moving pieces. Like, oh, there's cost of licenses, there's cost of the minutes, people, whatever other things come into play. So you want to make sure you're looking at all the right components here to say when you figure out like what is value or what equates to value for that customer, that like one, we're hitting on the things that make sense to them. And again, we're starting at a spot where they're going to get value and that ROI or, return there. And that's like I said, if you do that well in the beginning, you're going to get a customer hooked because again, it's pretty hard to go backwards, right? Like once you're doing something automated, it's not even just the company and their contact center. It's their customers that are the ones that will not accept it.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to share in our notes for the podcast. We'll have more information. We'll have a link to with your information. I'll mention that Cloud Tech Gurus is a distributor for Yellow.ai. We're super excited to have you guys as a partner. So anyone wants to dig deeper with Yellow to see what is the art of the possible, you can reach out to me or Cloud Tech Gurus and we can help with that. But otherwise, I think this has been a great educational podcast for folks to listen to learn about what's relevant now with AI, what's possible now. And certainly I could talk to you all day. We'll come back. We'll do some other sessions in the future, maybe even dig in more to cost, the cost model and the potential returns people are seeing and, the financials that make this worthwhile. So we'll come back to that and other topics, maybe even think about doing things on particular verticals. But this was great, Mike. You were so informative and fascinating as always. I always find conversations with you to be very compelling. And so thank you so much for joining me today.
Darren, my pleasure. Really appreciate it as well. Be well, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you kindly.